Okay, so now we are ready to add some grass to the scene. So since we want the grass to be only on the green areas of the ground and not on the sand, we want to turn back on the vertex color display for the ground object. Okay, like that. And now we can create a curve or a spline that will represent the area which will be filled with grass. Okay. I'm going to trace the border between the sand and grass, roughly like this. Alright, let's move it up so we can see it. And let's make it larger so it covers the whole visible area. And I think something like this might be fine. Okay. And now I'm going to merge in the grass geometry. I have some pre-made models here in the plants folder. I made some of them myself, and I took some from the Forest Pro library. And here they are. Some reeds for the pond, some grass models, and some dandelions for the spring scene. Okay, and as you can see, those grass models are pretty tiny clumps, and it can be quite difficult to fill very large areas if you use such small clumps, and it can look a bit too uniform. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create my first intermediate Forest Pro object, which is going to be a slightly larger clump of grass. Okay, like this. So let's start with a circle, let's make it about 1 meter large. Okay, maybe 80 centimeters. And go to iTools Software, Forest Pro, and create your Forest Pro object by clicking on the circle. And now we're going to replace the geometry with some of these grass models. Okay, let's add one more for the slightly taller grass. And let's add these little herbs here. And finally, this even taller grass model. Okay. And since we can only see one of those models, it means the distribution density is a bit too low. So let's change the density to dense and reduce the density and unit size. So something like 150 in this case. Looks good. Okay. So now let's adjust the probability of the object. So these herbs should be pretty rare. So let's set the probability to maybe 2%. Okay, maybe 5. That's fine. The longer grass should not be so common as well, so let's set that to maybe 30. Okay, and the rest looks all right. So let's enable some random transforms so it doesn't look so uniform and so perfect. So basically just some slight translation, rotation, and scaling. Okay. And I sometimes like to turn on the scaling fall off for the area to make the grass slightly shorter as it approaches the edge. Alright, like that. Maybe edit the curve so the fall off is a bit faster. And maybe let's make this piece of grass a bit shorter. So this clump looks quite good. Maybe make it slightly denser. And we can try filling our grass area over here. Okay, so to do that, I'm just gonna go ahead and create another forest object. And this time click on this area here. Okay, I'm not gonna enable the camera visibility limits, since we have some reflections that should be seen. And as your geometry, pick custom object, and click right here. Okay, and let's enable the point cloud display. Okay, right now everything is floating in the air, and we can drop that down by adding a surface to our forest object. And as the surface, we're going to use the ground. Okay, perfect. Alright, let's render and see how it looks. Okay, from this small region it's quite obvious that we need to increase the density quite a bit. And to increase the density, I'm just going to turn on those random transforms as well while we're at it. Maybe make the scale a bit stronger. And let's bring up the density. So let's set the unit size to maybe 5,000 or 2,000. Let's try 2 for now and see how that looks. And I'm going to change the map to dense. Okay, let's render and see. And as you can see, it doesn't render anything because we have exceeded the limits set here in the display parameters for the render. So we have max items 1 million. I'm going to change that to 9 million, and we have max faces to 5 million, and I'm going to change that to 50 million. And let's see if that changes anything. Okay, nice and dense grass. Let's see the whole thing. Okay, the grass density looks fine. Maybe even slightly too much, but that's alright. I think it's gonna be good. And now we're gonna fix the material. It looks very uniform right now. And we're gonna go to the small clump we created earlier. And we're gonna modify its materials. So we want to randomize the color of this grass. Okay, I'm gonna create a camera here, just regular V-Ray camera, so we can see it with the correct colors. And isolate the selection. Alright, so let's render and see how it looks. We just have some basic flat diffuse colors for the materials. So we're gonna fix that by opening up the editor and creating a new material. It's gonna be slightly translucent, so let's use V-Ray 2-sided and set the front material as regular V-Ray material and set up a forest color map in the diffuse slot. Okay, so for now I'm gonna just set it as a simple color. And let's give it some light reflections. Blur them a bit. And turn the Fresnel up as well. Okay. Now we have to assign the material, so let's select the forest object and drag and drop it in the short grass. Make an instance, medium grass, make another instance, large grass, okay, another instance, and tall. So right now we're using this single material for all the plants. So the color looks alright, but it is much too uniform. Every blade of grass looks exactly the same. And let's fix that by using the forest color map. Okay. As you can see, you can use a gradient to blend with the colors, and it changes the end result. So this particular gradient is not right for grass, so we're going to create a new gradient ramp. And let's add some color variation. So starting from something like this to maybe lighter green. Alright. Let's check again. So now we have some color variation. But I want some variation in the lightness as well. So we're going to use not the color blending mode, but the average blending mode. So in this case it takes the diffuse color and mixes it at 50% with the gradient color. Looks alright. Maybe a bit too bright in some places, so let's make that bright color slightly darker and maybe more saturated. Okay. Maybe let's add a tiny bit of dried grass with brownish color. So just click to add some points to your gradient and create a point like this and see how that looks. Okay. Maybe make it slightly smaller. Okay, that's not too bad, but let's try changing variation to something in the middle between item and element. And that's more like it. You don't get large patches of the color anymore, but they're more scattered around the scene. Okay, looks good. Maybe need some darker stems, but we're gonna do that a bit differently. I'm gonna create a copy of this material. Okay, let's name this one short grass. Okay, this one medium grass, and make another copy and name it large leaved grass. Okay, so for the third one we're gonna change the diffuse color to something a bit darker. And cooler. And blur the reflections a bit more. Okay, we're gonna use this for the large leaved objects. And for the medium grass we're gonna make the grass a bit darker or saturated. And maybe make the gradient darker as well. Okay. And use that for the medium grass and the tall grass. Okay, let's check again. Okay, that's alright, but we have to fix the gradient for the large leaved object. So get rid of those brown patches. Maybe make it slightly more bluish and even darker. And like that. Check again. And our grass patch is starting to look pretty good. Right. Let's maybe make the reflections for the medium grass a bit stronger. Perfect. So let's go back to our original camera, unhide all, and see how it looks in the scene. I think it's pretty nice. Okay, so now we want to add a smooth transition between these clumps of grass and the sand. So we could try doing that by... Okay, let's rename the object first. We can try doing that by using the fall-off map, but I think it's not gonna work exactly as we want it to work. Just because we have these large clumps. Okay, so let's set the fall-off scale to 2 meters. And let's check how that looks. It looks very patchy, almost like moss instead of grass. And that's not exactly what we're looking for. I want a smoother transition instead of this result. And to cover it up a bit, we're going to create another forest object. And we're going to use some smaller grass objects to fill it. Okay, so our next forest object is going to be made by copying this line. And I'm going to just outline it outwards like this. And inwards like this. Okay, let's get rid of the original. Let's blend these together in the weld tool. Okay. And let's split the thing into 2. So this line is going to be detached and renamed as, okay, edge, area, okay, area, edge, exclude. And this one is going to be area, edge, include. Okay, let's isolate the selection and let's see what we have here. Right, so this curve represents the area which will have some nice fall off for the grass, and this curve represents the area that will exclude the grass from it. So everything that is inside this curve is not going to have this grass. So I'm going to overlay it like this. So right now what we're looking for is to add grass only to this tiny strip here. Okay. And I'm actually going to go to my grass objects. And I'm going to create a couple that are smaller than even these ones here. So just make a copy of this, cloned object, and maybe even some single strands. or double strands like these. Okay. And this is what we're going to use for this grass fall off. Not big clumps, but tiny short blades of grass. Okay, so let's start with this edge area include. So create a forest per object, pick that line, and we're going to turn on limit visibility. Okay, and add the exclude line straight away. So go to areas, add by name, and pick area edge exclude, and set it to exclude geometry. So right now what you have is a forest object that only fills this tiny strip here. Okay, let's bring down the distribution map size. And now we're gonna unhide all and add our grass blades. Okay, so change the geometry to custom object and pick those single blades we just created. And maybe the really short grass as well. Okay, let's see how it renders. Okay, first we have to drop it down to surface. So add the surface. Now let's render and see how it looks. So it's quite a bit too thin. I'm gonna turn on some transforms. And I'm gonna reduce the density map size. Okay. So it's not rendering. Let's increase the number of items. Okay. From the top view, hide all. And let's move that exclude line to cover more area. Okay. It's still a bit too thin. Let's reduce the threshold, render again. Maybe set it to full. Alright. I think that's gonna be okay. Okay, looks good. And now we're going to turn on the fall off to make it gradually shorter. So go to your areas, scale, and include, let's say, 1.5 meter fall off. Looks alright. Maybe let's edit the curve to a more rounded one. And unhide all. And let's see the results all together. So now it looks much better than before. When we had these large clumpy areas around the edges, now it looks much nicer with the short grass, creating a nice fall from the grass to the sand. Right, so that's the basic grass, and maybe let's add some larger clamps of long stems. So I'm just gonna delete this camera and create a small clump. Okay, let's say 0.5 meter large. So create a forest pro object. Click on the circle, change that to custom object, and pick some of this longer grass. And maybe add some thicker elements as well. Alright, so let's make those thicker elements about 2%. Maybe 3. I'm going to turn on the mesh display so you can see exactly what's going on there. Okay, some random transforms, looking good. Alright, and let's add some area fall off in scale. like 8 centimeters or so. Make it slightly denser. And looks alright. Let's add some materials. So the tall grass will have this dark material. And the rest will have this medium material. Okay, let's make one lighter. Okay, good. I'm going to change the seed to maybe get a better composition here. Okay, and this looks quite alright. Let's scale this one down a bit. Okay, and I think this is going to be good. And now just create another forest object. Using this line, we're going to limit visibility. Okay, change the geometry to custom and pick this larger clump we just created. Okay, enable those. Okay, let's isolate and see how it looks. Okay, much too dense. We're going to change that to scattered. Drop it down to surface. Maybe change it not to scattered but to groups or so. Let's see how it looks. Okay. Enable some scaling. Transforms. Make the whole thing a bit larger, and by changing the global scale. Maybe 220. Right, let's unhide all and see how it looks all together. So now we have some longer grass patches as well. That's good. Make the scale maybe 150. And increase the density a little bit. Check again. Looks pretty decent. And I think we can call the grass finished for now.